Hi, Josh here, popping in just to give a little personal health update. I've been home from hospital less than 24 hours and I'm absolutely exhausted, but I just wanted to get this posted to let you know what's happening. I'm going to try to just kind of give the whole update and upload it with little to no video editing because I just don't have the energy or time to sit and edit. So sorry if there's lots of pauses and kind of jumping around and this doesn't seem like it flows very well, but like I said, I just don't want to sit down and edit this thing. So I'm going to be getting back to my regular videos hopefully in the near future, because I did record a couple of videos in between my hospital visits. I recorded one very long book review about Lonesome Dove, an excellent book, so I had a lot to say about that, and one about the board games that I played in, I think it was April. So I do have those videos recorded. I have to find the time to sit down and edit them. So in the meantime though, I just wanted to get this update out here. Some of you might have been already following along in my YouTube community posts where I've been sort of updating things as they go along. The twists and turns continue even as of the last day since being home from hospital. There's kind of more stuff potentially come to light here, which I'll get to shortly. So if you have been following along with those community posts, I will put timestamps in this video to show when the new information starts. I think the last time I posted something, I have this stuff in front of me to reference as I go through it here, but I guess other than the post that I made yesterday, as of this recording, I'm recording this on a Thursday. The one before that was almost a week ago, shortly before I went into the hospital. So the new stuff will be everything from my second ER visit to my hospital admission to my release and what has been coming up since then. So go ahead and skip all the stuff you've perhaps already read about in the community posts, and I'll just kind of go back to the beginning for people that haven't been following along with those. So essentially, I better add just as a warning here, there's going to be lots of medical talk. There's going to be really disgusting diarrhea talk as well, so if that is too much for you, go ahead and skip this video. But this is kind of the reality I've been living with over the past month. So yeah, so going back to about April 21st, almost a month ago already, I had ordered my usual every other pizza that I order when my kids are here with me every other weekend. And on that Sunday, I think April 21st, I started to feel a little bit worse than usual. And over the next couple days, started to have this kind of worsening diarrhea, which it didn't feel normal compared to my usual Crohn's disease, but initially I had written it off as my Crohn's. And however, within a few days, it became very clear that something was very wrong and it was different from my Crohn's. Essentially, my usual Crohn's symptoms are lower right stabbing pain in my abdomen, along with looser stools, diarrhea, that sort of thing. However, this was very much stomach related, where anytime I tried to put any food in my mouth, my stomach would just cramp up. I get so nauseous. I've never been somebody who vomits, so basically my body had to pass it through and then violently expel it repeatedly over and over again, to the point where I was having a good 12 to 15 bouts of diarrhea per day. And not to get into the gory details, but it was very different diarrhea than I'm used to with the Crohn's disease. So speaking of that, I do have very extensive history with my GI system. I've had Crohn's disease since I was roughly 10 years old. It nearly took my life when I was 23 years old. I had an emergency bowel resection surgery in 1999 to get that sorted out. I had a second bowel resection surgery in 2015 to fix up some more issues. My past couple trips to emerge over the past handful of years were for actually what turned out to be diverticulitis, not the Crohn's, as well as a case of gastroenteritis, which embarrassingly enough, I had to call an ambulance for as a paramedic. You never want to be the one calling the ambulance to be the patient. That's just awkward. But I had kind of put it off too long, and I was starting to pass out from fluid loss at that point. So lots of GI history there. So I'm really quite in tune with the experience of Crohn's. It's put me through hell and back. I'm pretty aware of how it feels in my body. And this time around, it definitely wasn't the Crohn's that was giving me trouble. So after about 5 days of this, it would have taken me to about April 26th or so, I finally got to the point where I was trying to call my doctors. My gastroenterologist, I called them. They're like, oh, come in on May 6th. That's the soonest we can get you in. I'm like, that's not going to work for me. And my family doctor was like, well, I mean, I think it sounds like you need to go to Emerge. So that's what I ended up doing. 5 days into this, I went into the ER and I spoke with a doctor there. And this doctor, I described all these things to him, where I was having these really frequent, really crazy bouts of diarrhea, all the stomach pain, all that stuff. And he goes, oh, have you been constipated? And I was kind of speechless. I thought, is he joking? And I was like, no. And he's like, oh, if there's a blockage there, then that diarrhea could be the stool trying to get around the blockage. And I'm like, is this guy dipping into his own supply? Like, what on earth is he talking about? I've never met a doctor who said such a outrageous thing. But anyways, they booked an MRI or a CT scan for me, which he comes back with the CT results later, and he's like, well, you're not constipated. I'm like, really? And he's like, there's also no signs of the Crohn's. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's what I figured. But I guess what they decided to do was to just give me some stool collection kits, send me home on that Friday evening, and then collect those over the weekend and bring them back to the lab on the Monday morning. So, yeah, that was quite a quick trip to Emerge for this area here, in and out in 6 hours. But I ended up waiting for the results of the stool samples. As I mentioned in the community post that I wrote on YouTube, I waited quite a long time for those results, and I was contacting both my family doctor and my gastroenterologist to see what had come up, because my assumption was that something in that chicken and pizza I had ordered that weekend had gotten into my system, like a bacterial gastroenteritis or something along those lines, maybe even a parasitic thing, who knows. But neither of my doctors could find those results anywhere in the hospital system, and both of those physicians actually work shifts in that hospital. So the assumption was, I guess, that the hospital had misplaced or lost either the samples or the results themselves. Though when I got back to the hospital later, their claim was that they had the results and they were all negative. Not sure exactly what the truth is there. However, at this point, I'm still extremely ill, as sick as I ever was. The first time into Emerge there, after only 5 days, I had lost about 7 pounds in weight, just from my inability to take in food, plus everything that was pouring out the other end. And the more the days went on, at about 10 days into it, I'd lost about 10 pounds. And I was waking up. There was a couple mornings there where I woke up in bed just soaked in diarrhea, not even having realized that I had soiled myself in my sleep. So just having to get up, get in the shower, wash my bedding and clothes and all that, and try to keep functioning, try to keep looking after my kids. So not getting any answers from the doctors. Again, I tried to see if the gastroenterologist could take me in, and they stuck with their line of come see them on May 6th. And so essentially it got to the point where on last Friday, whatever date that was, I ended up going back into emergency again. And, well, but before that happened, here's where I was trying to get into the gastroenterologist. As I wrote in the post here on YouTube, I had a conversation with my GI's office where they went something like this, me talking to the receptionist in the clinic. I said, if the stool sample results are either missing or negative, are there any other samples we can take? Is there anything else we can look for in the stool? Because I was still convinced there was something that had gotten into my system that we needed to find. And basically the GI office answer was, well, the doctor would like to book you for a colonoscopy next month. And I was like, I can't wait a month. I'm so ill. And plus, I know there won't be anything to see. I've lived with Crohn's for almost 40 years, and I know this isn't the Crohn's. And the office was basically like, well, I'll mention this to the doctor, but he would like to do the colonoscopy. And so I'm still trying to argue to this, is there any other stool test sampling we can do? And let's see here, just trying to refer to my previous post here. Oh yeah, and the office said, oh yeah, at that point the office was like, well, we don't have your sample results yet. I was like, what? It was 10 days ago that I had taken them. And the office said, well, we have been unable to find them, but the stool samples can take a while for the lab to get back. And I was like, yeah, they told me 48 hours. It's been 10 days, or at that point it had been 12 days since I'd taken or submitted the samples. And so the office said, well, we should have those results in the next couple of days. So about that colonoscopy, and I'm like, you should have gotten the results 10 days ago. And I'm trying to explain this isn't the Crohn's or the gastroenteritis this time. And I'm trying to explain that this feels most like that time when I had the gastroenteritis, when I had to go by ambulance to the hospital. But in the meantime, while I'm having this conversation, my family doctor called, and that's when I found out that they couldn't find my stool sample results either anyways. So yeah, jumping forward again to the second trip to Emerge, which at that point I was, I think, I was about 2 weeks after my first trip to Emerge, so about 19 days or so into this whole thing. And this time around, I didn't get that doctor who thought I was constipated. This time I had this nurse practitioner who ordered an upper GI ultrasound to look at my liver and gallbladder, and neither of which looked particularly healthy. They said that I had a fatty liver and that I had sludge in my gallbladder, which I have no idea what that even means, even with my medical background. I don't know what having sludge in the gallbladder means, but in any case, apparently neither of those things could explain the symptoms I was having. Obviously, they did more blood work and all this stuff. And after about 6 or 7 hours, the nurse practitioner came back to me. She's like, tells me about the liver and the gallbladder stuff, and she's like, yeah, so, we're not sure what it is. The best thing is you can do is go home, go on a liquid diet, and follow up with your gastroenterologist. And I'm like, I've been on essentially a liquid diet for the past 19 days. I've lost at this point about 12 pounds at the point where I was in Emerge there the second time. I'm here because I can't function any longer. I can't wait for my May 6th GI appointment or whatever it was. And at that point, this nurse practitioner gets angry with me. She's like, can you function at home? I was like, no, I really can't at this point. And she's glaring at me and she says, well, then we'll have to admit you. And I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, I think I have to. And she's like, fine, we'll admit you. And then sends me back to the waiting room. And it was only at that point that they finally gave me an IV. Once they had decided to admit me, they gave me an IV, started to give me fluids, which I desperately needed. And started the preparation to get me admitted to the hospital. And So that was maybe about 5 p.m. they started that process. And so I was in this inner waiting room in the hospital with a bunch of other people. As the hours went by, the waiting room cleared out one by one until there was around midnight. There was just me and this other couple there. I guess one person in the couple was sick. I think the guy was sick, and his partner was there to support him. And the three of us were sitting there for a couple more hours. And finally, a little after midnight, the lady of the couple goes up to the nurse's station to find out, what their status is. And the nurse tells her, "Oh, we've been going to the outer waiting room and calling your name, and we haven't been hearing from you." And they were like, "You've had us here in the inner waiting room the whole time." And the poor lady starts crying, and I guess the hospital had just completely forgotten they'd brought them into that part of the waiting room. So anyways, they got taken away somewhere, and at that point I'm left on my own thinking, I've been sitting here about 7 hours. I wonder if they've forgotten about me. So I went up to the nurse's station, and sure enough, they had no idea who I was. They're like, "We don't see your chart anywhere." And eventually somebody had went and found my chart. Somebody had left it somewhere. So they figured out who I was. They got me into a bed there in the ER. They didn't have a bed on an admit floor to get me to, so I basically around, I think at that point it was about 1:30, they settled me into a bed in the emerge, and I dozed off for a bit, and after about an hour or so they woke me up to move me to another bed in another part of the emerge. Dozed off for another hour or so. Woke up a second time at around 5 in the morning, just completely soaked in diarrhea, to the point where it took my shirt, my pants, my underwear, threw it all straight in the garbage. And the nurse comes in, she's like, "Oh, don't throw out your clothes. Here's a bag for your personal belongings." I'm like, I'm not going to keep this stuff in a bag for my hospital stay and take it home and clean it. Good Lord, that's awful. So anyways, oh God, I'm so tired. Sorry, I'm trying to get through this. Yeah, so they got me around noon. Around noon on Saturday, they got me up to an admit floor, and they got a really nice room on the second floor of the hospital there, thankfully. So finally being away from the craziness of the ER, getting some kind of one-on-one care with a nurse, getting settled into a room. They weighed me at that point. At that point, I was down 15 pounds from what I was about 3 weeks previous. And at that point, being the weekend, it basically just had to wait till Monday for further testing, other than kind of basic blood work and yet more stool samples and all that stuff. So yeah, what they told me was that they were going to send me to endoscopy, and I was like, oh great, that's excellent. They'll stick a scope down my throat, they'll have a look in my stomach, they'll get a good close look at what's happening in there, on top of all the 12 or 13 stool sample collections I'd done. Hopefully something will turn up. So Monday comes around, they take me up to the endoscopy floor, and my gastroenterologist is there. He's working in the hospital that day. And I say to him, in 40 years of having Crohn's, this is the first time I'll have an upper endoscopy. He goes, "Oh, we're not doing that, we're doing a colonoscopy." And I was like, "What, a colonoscopy?" He's like, "Yeah, this is probably your Crohn's disease." I'm like, no, this is not my Crohn's disease. And he's like, "Oh, because I said, this is stomach issues. It's totally different." He's like, "Well, presentation of Crohn's can change over time." I'm trying to tell him, no, you're not listening to me. This isn't my Crohn's. This is a stomach issue, and even my diarrhea is completely different. And he's like, "Oh, diarrhea, hey, that's definitely a bowel thing." And I'm just, nothing I could say to this guy could get through. But finally, thankfully, he's like, "Well, what we can do is we'll scope both ends. We'll look in both ends." I'm like, okay, at least I'll take that. So even when I'm lying in the room, they're prepping me, getting me ready to go, I say to the doctor, "I'm going to be the most surprised person in this hospital if you see any Crohn's disease there. Sure enough, I wake up from the procedure. The GI doc comes to talk to me. He's like, we didn't see any Crohn's anywhere. I'm like, yep. And he's like, in fact, everything looks pretty good. So we just did a whole bunch of biopsies. Got to wait about a week for the biopsy results. And I don't know, sent me back to my room, basically. Meantime, though, I finally had a good physician on the second floor of that hospital there. And she comes up with this theory, this thing I'd never heard before, called eosinophilic gastroenteritis. Quite a mouthful, but essentially it's an autoimmune inflammation of the stomach, which I'm quite familiar with autoimmune gastrointestinal issues, with Crohn's being an autoimmune disease. And that is finally something that is making sense to me, given the fact that they can't find anything anywhere else. There's no other apparent explanation. That kind of seems to be what's happening there. So they decide that they're going to start me on some IV prednisone, or this is called Salu-Medrol, is the IV version of prednisone. And then at that point, partly because I hadn't eaten really in a couple of days, almost nothing at all, my system was feeling a lot more settled. The diarrhea was settling down. I was feeling much better. So on Tuesday evening, they gave me the first IV shot of the Salu-Medrol, and a handful of hours later, when I was laying in bed trying to sleep, I just had this kind of overwhelming body anxiety, like just almost tremoring with this kind of anxiety symptoms. So they had to come in and give me some Ativan to help me go to sleep on Tuesday evening. Then on Wednesday morning, I got my second dose of the Salu-Medrol, and this time I had an actual allergic reaction to it. Started this rash on my face, feeling lightheaded and woozy, and that was very strange because I'm almost certain that I've had this stuff in the past for my Crohn's disease. I'm quite sure I've had Salu-Medrol in years past for the Crohn's, but this time I had a full-on allergic reaction to it. It wasn't an anaphylactic reaction or anything, but definitely a reaction. So that was Wednesday morning? No. Yeah, that was yesterday morning. And however, again, by this point, my system was still continuing to do pretty well. Other than the fact that on the on the Monday morning, to prep me for the scopes, they made me drink 2 liters of laxatives, chug this banana flavored laxative, which just as my diarrhea was clearing up nicely, I was finally starting to have some nice, quite soft but formed stool. All of a sudden, first time in 3 weeks I'm not having diarrhea. They make me drink 2 liters of laxatives to clear me out for my scopes. But anyways, by Wednesday, yesterday, my system was feeling pretty good until I had that allergic reaction, and they gave me some Benadryl, whatever. It eventually cleared out. But we had been, before that happened, we had been talking about getting me released that day because my kid's mother was getting ready to go away on vacation for a week. So she'd been looking after the kids while I was in the hospital. But as of yesterday, Wednesday, she was going to be gone for a week, and I didn't want my poor kids to have to be bounced around to different houses and worry about their mother traveling and worry about their dad in the hospital. So I just wanted to get out of there and come home and be with my kids and make sure they were looked after. So I was really worried that this allergic reaction would set back my release from the hospital by a day or two, but thankfully the Benadryl settled things down, and I was able to talk them into letting me go yesterday afternoon. So I was released from hospital yesterday afternoon with this diagnosis of eosinophilic gastroenteritis. Well, that's the other thing. When I was arguing with my gastroenterologist, I thought our working diagnosis was eosinophilic gastroenteritis, and he said, "Well, your eosinophils can increase with active Crohn's disease as well." And eosinophils are basically a type of white blood cell that, I guess, when you have certain problems, they can increase. And anyways, so I came home from hospital yesterday late afternoon with this diagnosis in mind. They decided not to prescribe me any prednisone to take at home because, again, first of all, I had this reaction. Secondly, my body was seemingly clearing it out without the medication. I was quite happy to not be on prednisone, because prednisone is very effective for dealing with autoimmune diseases, for one thing. It's great for giving you energy, appetite. It's terrible for sleep, trying to sleep at night when you're so wired on prednisone. And also, I get this weird secondary effect of acne all over my back and face when I'm on, and you get puffed up in the face. That's just cosmetic stuff that goes away, but the staying awake, insomnia is pretty rough. So I was happy to not be on prednisone. But here's the final twist in the story, though. So yesterday evening, when I got home from hospital, I took a sandwich home with me from the hospital. I had that for dinner, and they told me that they thought I reacted to the Salu-Medrol because they're not supposed to give it to people who are lactose intolerant. And I am lactose intolerant, although I do enjoy dairy-based treats, pizza, ice cream, all that stuff with the help of lactate pills. I just take a few lactate pills and I'm able to enjoy those things no problem. So that was the thought behind the allergic reaction I had. But so yeah, I came home, I had my hospital sandwich for dinner, and I had a little pudding cup with a few lactate pills to help digest it. And then yesterday evening, towards bedtime, wouldn't you know it, but my stomach started cramping up again. Bloating, gas, even some diarrhea coming back. This morning I wake up to get my kids to school, and I'm feeling so sick again, having this diarrhea again. I'm like, what is going on? I'm in the hospital. This stuff is cleared up on its own. I'm back home for just a handful of hours, and this is all coming back again already. So now I'm thinking in my head, between the allergic reaction I had to the Salu-Medrol and the fact that I had this pudding cup, do I now have a full-on allergy to milk products, to lactose, whereas before I was just lactose intolerant and I could handle it with the pills? Now, is this entire thing over this past whole month a result of a new allergy? Because as these past 3 to 4 weeks have gone by, like I said, getting any food into me was agony. And so I tried to stick with things that I thought would be easy to digest in comparison. So every morning I would start my morning by popping a couple lactate pills and eating some yogurt, because I figured yogurt, nice and almost liquidy. The bacterial cultures in the yogurt would probably be good for the stomach. So no matter how I was feeling, I always started off my day with a yogurt. And then again, I would have these easier to digest things like puddings, soups for dinner, some cream-based, some not cream-based. So throughout this whole time I've been sick, I've been eating milk products, as I always have, with the assistance of the lactate pills. But at this point in time, my current theory is I've maybe developed a food allergy, quite possibly to milk products. So now I have to go back to my family physician and get a referral. Well, see if she agrees, and will refer me to an allergy clinic to get some allergy testing. But that would be quite a thing. Obviously, I'm going to avoid all dairy for now and see if things settle again within my system. I'm not sure what to think about all this. I was really bummed at the idea of this new autoimmune GI disease, this eosinophilic gastroenteritis, because the thing with autoimmune diseases, is you just never know when they're going to pop up. And I already have my Crohn's to deal with. I was feeling pretty bummed about having this other thing, especially since eosinophilic gastroenteritis is such a very rare thing, and apparently very little is known about it. But now to switch that thinking to maybe I have an allergy to lactose or dairy, that would be a huge blow to my quality of life, because I already have to avoid all kinds of yummy foods with the Crohn's disease. I can't enjoy alcohol or beers. Can't sit on a summer patio with a nice cold pint, which really sucks. And so my comfort foods have always been, number one, chocolate, milk chocolate. Every single day at lunch, I have half a Cadbury Dairy Milk Bar, either a smooth vanilla cream or a chocolatey indulgence Dairy Milk Bar. So that's always my lunch treat. And then the amount of ice cream I eat, especially in the summer, is pretty outrageous. The amount of pizza I eat on a weekly basis, that's going to be a massive blow to just my overall level of being able to treat myself, to cheer myself up with nice treats and stuff. So shouldn't get ahead of myself, though. Obviously, you got to do the allergy testing and all that. So that's about where I'm at. I'll quit rambling on, but the whole process has been a process of just really having to advocate for myself. It's been really, really frustrating to deal with hospital staff who, because nothing is showing up on the imaging that they do, MRI and ultrasound and all that, they don't necessarily believe you that you're as sick as you're saying. Even with all my medical history, they're not taking it for granted that what I'm telling them is the actual truth. And so having to fight with the hospital to get me admitted, having to fight with my specialist to look in the right areas of my body, it's just been when you just don't have the energy to fight, you just need somebody to help you. That's all you desperately need, just somebody to step in and get in there and help you, instead of you having to do all that yourself is horrible and exhausting. And I, as a former medical professional myself, as a paramedic, I can look back and see how I was guilty of that too, because here's the thing, the hospital system is full of people who, for one thing, in the emergency specifically, is full of people who don't need to be in the emerge department. They should be at their family doctor's office. It's not an emergency. And in fact, the second time I came into emerge, the ER nurse rather snarkily asked, "So what emergency brings you in here today?" Because she's seeing this all day, every day, all these people wandering in with headaches and belly aches and things that should be looked after by their family doctor, if people actually had family doctors. So they're seeing this day in and day out. Who knows, 95% of the people are not true emergencies in emergency. So, and it was the same thing on the ambulance too. So many calls we did that completely unnecessary in terms of ambulance work. I mean, so many people have this erroneous belief that if they call an ambulance and they're taken to hospital by ambulance, they're going to jump to the front of the line. They're going to be seen quickly. It's just not the case. Everybody gets triaged the same, no matter how they arrive at hospital. You'll just end up getting left in the waiting room anyways, even if you take an ambulance for a minor problem. But there is this belief out there that people can fast track themselves by calling ambulances. So we would see this time after time, and so it led me at times to underestimate problems that were more serious because of the situation. So I could see how I failed people in the same regard that I was failed at the hospital too. So anyways, yeah, really advocating for yourself, I guess, if you're advocating in the right place. If I'm not just somebody who stubbed my toe and I'm demanding to be seen immediately in emergency. But Yeah, it's tough. The hospital, the whole health system is so underfunded, so understaffed, so overworked. The poor nurses bear the brunt of it. They're angels, though. They do a wonderful job. And they're really asked to work miracles every day, and they do. So I'm certainly grateful for the work they do. And I'm going to stop rambling now because it's time for me to go pick up my older boy from school. And you've listened to me long enough. Like I said, I'm going to try to get back to some editing of regular videos, hopefully over the next several days. We'll see how long it takes me to get a video out. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. Anyways, oh, I also wanted to, before I leave, one big thank you for my Patreon supporters for keeping up your support even in this time when I've been laid up sick and unable to post videos, especially to my highest tier supporters, Osmondus, Pervect, and Joanna. You know, just knowing that you're still there for me, it really means a lot to me too. So thank you. Thank you all for listening. Catch you all with a normal video soon. Cheers.